Welcome back to the Inventory Remake series. I've been quite busy with college, and that doesn't seem like it'll change anytime soon, but I'm trying my best to keep getting these videos out for you guys. Nonetheless, this video will cover mostly some small adjustments to the inventory system, such as adding an equipped label to items that are equipped, setting up our code to better be ready to start handling the armor equipping, and then fixing some issues with losing items on death, though definitely not all of them, as I discover many more later on. Anyway, let's get right to the video. We'll delete everything in Starter Pack and then copy everything from server storage to all items back into our Starter Pack, just to make sure the items we hold when we start the game are up to date with our corresponding samples in server storage. Then we'll copy the health potion a few times as well as the event item and the rock. When we test again, you'll see that all our items appear in the hotbar as attended, but when we unequip the helmet we created earlier to try to re-equip it, it gives us the warning we added earlier saying that armor equipping isn't implemented yet. The reason this is an issue is because armor is equipped to the hotbar to begin with, when armor shouldn't be able to do that. We'll head to the inventory server's equip to hotbar function and go to the loop that says validating stack. In the if statement inside that loop, we'll add a condition that checks to make sure the stack's item type value isn't equal to armor, since we don't want the equip to hotbar function to equip to the hotbar if the item is an armor item. When we test it, you can see that the armor no longer automatically equips, and if we try to equip an armor item manually, it gives us our not implemented yet warning, which is what we want. In the inventory server's equip button pressed function, where we added the not implemented yet warning for the armor, we'll run the temp janitor's clean method just to see what that does. When we try equipping an armor item again, this time it doesn't toggle the text like it was before, which is good because that text was intended only for equipping to the hotbar, not for equipping armor. We can see that the equipping still works for non-armor items as well. Head to the inv and hotbar GUI to find the sample frame inside the inventory scrolling frame. We'll insert a text label inside this frame that will display whenever the item is equipped, but be invisible if the item isn't equipped. This will make it easier to tell if an item is equipped or not without having to click on it and see the equip button itself. We'll add a UA corner to this text label to round it off, and we'll scale it to fit the entire width, but not go too far down from the top. We'll make the text white and make it say equipped, and then we'll change the background color 3 property to green so we can actually see the text. In the inventory client module, we'll head to the update display function where we loop through all the stacks in the player's inventory. Right here where we clone the sample, we'll also want to set the visibility of the equipped text label. In order to know what to set it to, however, we'll create a function that checks if an item is equipped or not. We'll call this function checkItemEquipped and give it just one parameter called stack data for which stack we want to check. We'll then check if the stack's item type value is armor, and if it is, then put another not implemented yet warning like before. If the item type isn't armor, then we'll run a for loop through all the items in the hotbar like we have in the past videos, and add an if statement that checks, for each hotbar slot, if the equipped stack's ID is equal to the ID of the stack we're currently checking. If it is, we'll return true, meaning that the item is in fact equipped. Outside of the for loop, we'll return false to say that the item isn't equipped. Back in the update display function, we'll then set the visibility of this equipped text label to the result of calling this function for the specific stack data that this item frame represents. This will essentially connect our logic for determining if an item is equipped to the specific item that we're displaying or hiding this label for. Testing it, we can see that it doesn't work whatsoever, which is great. Just for clarity, in our two warnings we have, we'll change them both to say armor not implemented yet instead of just not implemented yet, as that will make it more clear for the future. After a while, I also realized that this issue was a simple mistake on my end, since I forgot to add .stackID after the stack data to check its stack ID rather than the stack table itself. Doing that seems to have fixed it, as the labels now show for each item that's equipped, but the labels kind of cover the images, so we'll play around a bit with the design. Add a UI padding inside the scrolling frame, adding 10 pixels to the padding at the top. Then head to the equipped label and put -10 in the offset of its Y position to move it up 10 pixels to fill that space. We can also test the display on other devices by going to the Test tab at the top and clicking on Device. But if we copy the sample frame a bunch of times, you'll notice each frame kind of overlaps one another. To fix this, we'll add additional padding to the cell padding property of the UI grid layout inside the scrolling frame. We can now switch the devices to see how it looks on each one. I'm happy with it, so we'll move on. Before updating the hotbar in the inventory client's update display function, we'll update the canvas size to equal the UI grid layout's absolute constant size.y on the y-axis. This will, in theory, scale the amount of scrolling space in the scrolling frame based on how much space the item frames take up. If we test the game, we can see the labels still work and the update as intended, which is nice. We'll then go into server mode and duplicate the items several times to fill up our inventory. Now you'll see the scrolling frame gives us a little bit more scrolling room, but not enough. You can also see that I triggered the error for having more than the max items, but that's something we can worry about later. We'll go into starter pack and give the player a bunch of swords in order to test the size of the scrolling. Since the offset where the scrolling is just barely short of what it needs to be seems relatively constant, we'll add a number like 20 to the absolute content size.y from before. That seems to have worked great, so we'll remove all the items from the starter pack. Then we'll copy the items from server storage.allItems and paste them in the workspace so we can pick them up in game. Now when we test, we have no items, but we can pick up each item and see it appear in our inventory as intended, the armor item not being equipped of course. At this point I also encounter a few bugs with the inventory system related to resetting your character or dying. Sometimes when you die and respawn, the items still show in your inventory, but your actual backpack shows that it's completely empty. To account for death, and in an attempt to keep players' items when they die and respawn, we'll head to the char_added function inside the inventory server.playerAdded function. We'll create a variable for the player's current humanoid and then connect a function to the hum.died event. Everything in here will run whenever the player dies. When the player does die, we'll create a variable called allItems and set it equal to player.backpackGetChildren, which will be all the items in the player's backpack. We'll loop through each of these items and parent them all to this module script. There's no reason to parent it to this module script specifically, but that seemed the easiest since we still have a reference to each of that player's items and can easily parent them back when they finish respawning. Next, we'll wait for the player's character to be added again by running :wait on the player.characterAdded event. Then we'll create a variable for the player's backpack using waitForChild. Finally, we'll loop through the allItems table from before and parent each item into the player's new backpack, since the backpack is destroyed and recreated whenever you respawn. Testing it, we can see that it worked. You may occasionally experience some other death-related bugs while testing around, but in a later video covering some final bug fixes of this system, I'll fix all the bugs I've been able to find since initially making this system. On the screen will be provided a list of bugs that I have found since the initial making of the system, many of which I've already fixed and recorded the fixing of, but won't get to until the final episodes of this series. Thank you guys for watching and supporting my channel, and I'm sorry this series is turning out to be so long, but it just goes to show just how complex an inventory system really is when push comes to shove. Even after having made this system, I'm discovering countless ways I could have made it easier, but I simply wasn't aware or didn't think of them before making this system. But that's just how scripting is. You constantly get better at it the more and more you do. If you guys want to support me even more, or if you just want to access the completed files for this tutorial and more, then you can purchase various tiers of memberships either on YouTube or on Patreon for benefits like that and more. Nonetheless, you're supporting me just by watching and sharing my videos, so I hope you enjoyed this episode and I'll see you guys next time.